Well, hello and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and iTWire TV video. I'm joined today by Eric Johnson. He's the CEO of Nintex. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Alex. I'm glad to be here today. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and your listeners.
Well, thank you. So I thought I always like to start at the beginning and just ask you if you could please introduce us to Nintex and how it helps companies to manage, automate and optimize business processes, and then what the company offers the global market for 2021.
Oh, great. Love to be able to do that. So at Nintex, our mission is to improve the way we work through process management and automation. And so we about at the simplest level, think of all processes that exist in organizations that are still involving paper, email, spreadsheets. There is just a ton of process that is still not automated. I think 2/3 of all process in organizations, whether they're government or commercial, are still not automated and they're highly manual. In addition, organizations often struggle with actually knowing what their processes are. And so one of the first challenges is to help the organization understand their processes. And once you understand your processes, you can begin to reimagine them. And then with a set of automation capabilities that we provide, we allow our customers the ability, and we help them basically transform those processes. And so when we do that, whether it's increasing the efficiency of a business, whether it's actually doing a better job on compliance, think about going through an audit, you need to prove something out. When you automate, you can do that better. Or it's actually improving the experience to the end customer, which can drive revenue growth. We are all about effectively helping people improve their processes. That's the name of the game here at Nintex.
Yeah, and I mean, this is basically the whole digital transformation pitch, which we've heard over the past decade, if not longer to some degree. And, these processes have been improving and evolving. I mean, in 2021, from what you're saying, and clearly from all the market activity, a lot of businesses, a lot of people, a lot of companies are still on this journey. Some of them might have failed transformations from 5 years ago, that sort of the technologies, whatever they were doing in the past, it got usurped, I guess, by more modern processes. So you must be helping companies that have started their digital transformation journey and others that are upgrading from transformations past.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, Alex. I mean, one of the things we see is that a lot of organizations, and I've been in software for getting close to 25 years now, there's certain processes they may have bought technology to help them with. The challenge is the work tends to cut across those processes, across the whole enterprise, across multiple systems. And so I think what people struggle to do is they've automated maybe pieces of a process, but getting all the way to that last mile where you can fully automate an activity and really understand a process, there's been a lot of challenge. Now, the thing that's, I think, helping is that with faster internet bandwidth, with some of the new techniques and capabilities that are available, the fact we have more computing power, we have better connectivity, we have better mobile, it's really extending the capabilities, and the fact that I think we're all getting more skilled at using technology. I mean, you think about the way we use our phones. I mean, trying to tell my kids, and my kids are roughly, we have a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old, explaining that there was a world where you didn't have a computer in your pocket. They just cannot comprehend that. So I think there's a lot of things that have changed, and you really see it in 2021 and what we saw in 2020 in terms of the opportunities to automate and improve process.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've seen those videos where people are in a hotel room, not that too many people have been in hotels during COVID, but the parents give the kids their phone from the hotel, and they give them the handset, and they say, right, hang up the phone, and the kid looks at the phone and wonders, what do you mean? What is hanging up the phone? Because they've never done it. And I mean, I marvel at the fact that when I was a kid, you had the library, you had the Encyclopedia Britannica, but now that you've got a whole world in your pocket, information on demand. I mean, it's like those videos where the kids are given a Walkman and they say, what's that? And that only stores 1 hour of music. The level of change, and I mean, even the granularity of the data that people are shifting into the digital realm, and then they can analyze all of that and pass it in different ways, is just incredible. And that's, of course, I mean, just tell us briefly, when Nintex started, I mean, what you do today, it must have been less than 10% of what you started with. It must have evolved so much over the past few years. It must be unrecognizable.
Yeah, no, ton of evolution. We actually started in Melbourne, Australia back in
Wow.
2006.
Yep.
And our founders owned a little systems integration business that was helping clients build intranets and portals for their internal business. And often the client would say to them, hey, when my team members on this portal, maybe they could request time off, or maybe they could request to order something. So they had all these kind of common processes they wanted them to build an application for. And so they custom code it. And custom code took a long time. It was very expensive. They'd have to charge the client a lot. And so they built the original Nintex workflow designer for basically themselves.
Yeah.
And so back then it was kind of an early predecessor to the Microsoft, what they call SharePoint now. And they added this Nintex workflow designer, and it made them able to build the application way faster with a lower cost resource, which allowed them to bid lower to the customer. And so that little bit of our business, went on, continued to do well. And then over time, we added more and more capability. And so today, the business we have now is really, really different. Back then, that was all on premise, right? Cloud software was very early. If I look at the business today, the vast majority of everything we do is actually in the cloud or it's hybrid. And so really different in terms of both technology delivery and then even things like economic models. Back then you'd pay a big upfront fee, pay maybe a little bit ongoing and a big consulting fee. And nowadays you pay an annual subscription and it grows. The more you use, then the more you invest, but it's value oriented, right?
Yeah.
We only grow in the amount that a client invests with us if the amount of value and goodness that we're bringing grows. So it's a lot has changed in the industry in the last 15 or so years.
Well, I'm glad to see it. I mean, I went to an Intel event in China in 2007, and they were talking about batteries. This was one little sort of side section, and they were going to use at the time silver in batteries, and they had all these grandiose plans to recycle the silver in the batteries. But the thing that stood out, they talked about how Intel doubles its transistor base inside of processors every 18 months, as the famous Moore's law goes. They said the battery density and the battery technology doubles in sort of advancements, they said, every 18 years. So that's an example where it can be very slow. But of course, in the internet era, we've seen how quickly things have developed. And that leads me to your platform. I mean, the platform is vast. It has so many different things. You've done an acquisition we'll talk about in a moment. You've probably done a number of acquisitions. But just tell us a bit more about the different industries that use your platform, and just a couple of examples where it's really transformed what a company does, and without it, that probably wouldn't be in existence, or probably would have been disrupted by somebody else.
Yeah, so let me give you a few examples here. And we are fortunate, given our technology, every industry has some of these challenges. We're used across literally every industry you could imagine in over 90 countries. So we're pretty, very global and very pervasive. But what I would say is that there's a few industries where we're definitely used a lot more than others. Some good examples there would be government. So think of how every government, you've got your constituents, and there's all sorts of constituent communications. There's tons of internal processes, and so we get used a ton there. An example actually right out from your world, a couple that are sort of in the region. One would be the Liverpool local council. They use us actually to understand what their processes are. So in that organization, there's tons of different processes to provide services to the community. And they have all those processes documented, constantly being redesigned, leveraging the component of our platform called ProMap. Another one's actually in New Zealand. There's a group called Hawke's Bay Regional Council, and they're responsible. One of their duties is for all the rivers and a bunch of the beauty out in nature. And so they used to have people going out to the rivers, taking samples and literally writing it on a paper, bringing it back, and then having to input it in a system. Leveraging Nintex, they're actually able to automate all that field capture. And then say they find something has an issue, then that can trigger an action that someone else needs to take. So fully automated, keeping the environment really clean. So I'd say government is one that we do great in, and it's pretty tough to find a place where we don't have a bunch of government clients. So tons in government. Another is financial services. So if you think about banking, for example, banks obviously have customers. Oftentimes one of the key activities is lending money. And when you go to lend money, you need to capture information from a customer. That's a digital form. Then typically that needs to get routed and reviewed by various different departments, deciding whether they can make the loan, not make the loan. If it's above a certain dollar amount, maybe it has to go to another department. And so a lot of activity there. An example of a great banking customer we have in your part of the world is Oswide Bank. They've leveraged us both for a whole initiative around process transformation. They leverage ProMap, and then they leverage our automation capabilities around things like loan origination and some of their customer activities. So ton there. And then another area we do well in is around healthcare. And so if you think about healthcare in the world, there's lots of different segments of it. We deal with all of them, but one of them is pharmaceuticals. And so actually, of the world's 10 largest pharmaceutical companies, 8 out of 10 of them are significant Nintex customers, including firms like AstraZeneca and Amgen. So some of the best names in the world are leveraging Nintex, and it's for all sorts of things. Some of it's like internal, like how do I bring on new employees? Some of it's for extending and being part of the new drug approval process. So, if it involves people, if it involves approvals, if it involves the routing of information, any of those processes, which you can imagine, they're pretty diverse. We get used for, which is really great, and why we have such an opportunity for growth.
Yeah, well, I mean, some of those things must be as well. You're talking about processes, which reminds me of robotic process automation, which is plugging in some of these old legacy systems. And I've seen the robots at work, doing a million operations that humans couldn't copy anywhere near as quickly. And you must be doing a lot of that as well to join legacy systems and bring them into the 21st century with all the other cloud systems that you're offering and that are out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we believe in passion in, and we have this whole concept of being like the honest broker for automation, is first you should look at the process. And when you look at the process, you're going to discover kind of your current state situation. And then you think through what can we do to change it. Now, a lot of times the current process, if it's manual, you actually have the opportunity to create like a digital form, create some advanced workflow, and really automate the process using the most modern methods. Mm-hmm. But sometimes that system that you're maybe having to work with is so old that it doesn't have a modern API. And that's where robotic process automation can really come in and add a lot of value. And so let's say you've got a core banking system. Maybe it's in a bank where the system is very old, but it's very important, and it's going to be hard to replace. And so they just, at least yet, aren't going to modernize it and put an API on it. Using robotic process automation, you can take information that's either in spreadsheets or other systems, or that system, get it in or out in a highly efficient fashion. And so we've definitely seen quite a bit of opportunity. In fact, I think our RPA technology is used by over 600 banks globally, and even things like some of these special lending programs that COVID brought on. So different parts of the world had different programs. I think the one in the U.S. has been called the Paycheck Protection Program,
the PPP.
Yeah, and those loans, right? Businesses needed them bad, and they needed them quick. And so leveraging Nintex, both our workflow, our forms, our RPA, our document generation, our e-sign, that whole process end to end is able to be transformed. And depending on the bank's situation, they use different components. And so that's one of the things we think is really important in the market. You don't want to be just an RPA provider, or just a workflow and forms provider, or just doc generation, or just e-sign, or just process management. You really need to have all the capabilities, because you should use the right capability for the right situation.
You got to do it all. And,
yep.
And so just as you were talking, I was thinking that, given that RPA helps to bring effectively modern APIs to old-fashioned legacy systems, they really should redefine RPA as retrofitted programmable API.
Yeah, I mean, it really is helping work around some challenges, right? And just the truth of the situation is, a lot of organizations, they may have a core system or two or more that are going to take them some time to modernize, and so RPA can help bridge that gap until they fully modernize the system.
Yeah. Now, all of what you've spoken about is something that you're managing through the Workflow Cloud, right? I mean, I know you have a lot of services, but is that the umbrella that it sits underneath?
Yeah, so the Nintex Workflow Cloud is kind of our next generation modern set of capabilities around workflow and forms. But if you were to see all of our offerings, all of them generally are cloud-based. They have a very similar look and feel. We've put quite a bit of time over the last year or so into bringing everything together in a real unified platform. We have had quite a journey as a company. A lot of things we've built and developed ourselves, but some things we've went out and made acquisitions, or we've done partnerships. And so When we bring it all together, we bring it in together, and we have our, we even laugh about it a little bit, our blue stripe, but we have a really common look and feel now that we've put together. And Nintex Workflow Cloud was kind of our next generation workflow and forms. And what was really important about that is we wanted to make it easy to build these advanced workflows and forms across various different core systems. We wanted to make the connectivity very easy. And so it's actually got a bunch of pre-built bidirectional connectors that are right on the platform, but then it's got a really sophisticated SDK that someone with a little more technical knowledge can connect to another system that maybe we didn't build a connector to. And so we're seeing a ton of partners and customers come in, build those, stick them in our online. We have a community where we allow sharing. And so that's been a huge step forward for us, is the next generation of our capabilities.
It's great when your customers become, part of your programming team as such, and use the SDK to modify things in ways that you hadn't thought of yet. And it's part of that burgeoning ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that we believe passionately in, that, we're going to coexist with a lot of other providers. There's going to be companies that are making core systems like the CRM system or the HCM system, the ERP system. Then there's also going to be other providers that may have pieces of what we do. And a customer oftentimes has a lot of these things, and they say, hey, can you help me with my process across them? Can you work with them? And so we say, absolutely. That's, we're here to help you get more value from all of your investments. So with ProMap, you can see your processes across all of these different technologies. And then with each of our components, we're oftentimes integrating with some other technology provider. And that's the way of the modern world. And as you said, too, we love our community to be able to contribute. A lot of our great ideas and concepts have been customer driven.
Yeah, well, necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. And if there's a need for it, whether it's you or your customers through the SDK building it, it's getting done. And it's so nice to see all the different market players working well together. We all remember the the times when you couldn't easily transfer a Word document from PCs to Macs, but those days are long gone. And they're long gone. So in October last year, Nintex acquired K2 software. So how has K2 software enhanced Nintex's offerings over the past, must be getting almost nearly 6 months now?
Yeah, no, the integration has moved lightning fast. We've been super happy to bring Nintex and K2 together. We had coexisted for a long time. I think we had slightly different focuses, but to bring together two teams that really were out there helping folks with automation, great opportunity. And there's really a few benefits that we've been able to get that I think are good for customers. Number one, K2 had some more advanced IP around data management, and effectively really elegant around how you can connect to some of these systems and create custom objects. And so a little bit of that IP that K2 brought to bear, we've been able to bring into the core platform now and are integrating in. I'd say the second thing is that as a customer, right, you always want your provider to be innovating as fast as possible. And by bringing K2 and Nintex together, we have a massive increase in the number of engineers, and the K2 engineering team, which was or is primarily based in South Africa. These are great engineers. And so the level of talent that we added to the company, and then when I look at the roadmaps already on what we're being able to produce, and the teams all working together on Nintex Workflow Cloud and really producing that unified next generation together, we're just moving a lot faster. So I think as a customer, what does it really mean? It means greater use case coverage and faster pace of innovation. Third benefit is just we can show up more, right? When you bring companies together like that, you have more go-to-market resources, additional customers. I think it was a couple thousand incremental customers. And so at the end of the day, it's good for customers, right? We can solve more problems, we faster, and we can show up more often.
You always want those situations to be 1 + 1 = 3, and when it's done right, it is. So that's a good thing. Now, when is your next conference? I'm sure you'll have one sort of in different time zones for the different parts of the world, but when's the next Nintex conference that will help customers learn about all of these new things and the new things on your roadmap?
Yeah, we've got a virtual event right now that we're working on that's going to be in the May timeframe. I think it's going to be in the kind of latter part of mid-May. We've historically, in normal non-COVID times, we actually used to have a really awesome physical user conference we typically did in October.
Mm-hmm.
With COVID, we had to decide to get a little creative and go virtual. So we've been doing some periodic events in more of a virtual fashion, but we're going to have a very nice process event in the May timeframe.
Excellent. So as we get towards the end of the interview, I always have to talk about the future. And my first question is, with so many of the advances we've seen in the past decade or two, and look, I remember hearing in the year 2000 people talking about SaaS software, which, we now take for granted, all this next, multi-wheel, third, fourth, fifth generation cloud stuff. But how do you think the market's going to evolve over the next few years through to 2030? I mean, what will we be doing then? What do you think Nintex will be doing at that time?
Yeah, so I think the phase we're in right now, at least in our industry and our market, is the phase of, I'd say, a phase of convergence. There's a lot of different abilities. I think what you're seeing right now is there's going to be a smaller set of organizations that have very complete capabilities, and that bring together end to end, everything the customer needs and all of the things that really help you get the job done quicker. So I think the next 2 or 3 years, you're going to see a lot of convergence in our market. I would say as you look out a little bit further, and it's already started, but I think it'll become more and more real as the years go by, and that's the whole impact of artificial intelligence. And so when you think of all of the different components of AI, what will really happen is the stage we're in right now, I think there's a lot of things that help make designing automation quicker. Mm-hmm. And so think about, like, for example, we have a really cool capability that we're bringing out, generally available in market towards the end of March, but basically allows you to auto ingest a PDF form. It could even be a very sophisticated one, and the designer interprets exactly what that digital form would look like. And then all you're doing is double checking everything. And that's going against the massive learning model of millions of forms we've built over time. That's an example of AI making designing easier. Think about AI in the future, allowing you to kind of self-enhance and suggesting changes in the way the automation has been put together. And think about longer term, I think AI actually advising on where automation opportunities are and exactly how to do them, and maybe even self-generating the automation. So I think, over the next many years, I think you'll continue to see all of us make it easier to design. I think you'll see the capabilities become more powerful, and they'll leverage more of the modern technology. I'd like to believe by the time you get out to 2030 that the vast majority of the process would be automated, understood, optimized, and that it would be running on platforms like ours. The thing is, I would have hoped to see that even earlier. I do think there's always a certain amount of inertia against change, though. So I would suspect, 20 years from now, the systems and the technologies are much more advanced, just like the discussion, you and I are having around iPhones earlier today, around how much the world of technology's changed. I think to some degree, we can't even fully imagine what's possible in 8-9 years, but I would imagine a lot higher percentage of processes are automated. And I would imagine that AI has a much more significant role, and frankly, that there's fewer larger players in our market.
Oh, well, that's consolidation in any industry is natural. But then, of course, when that happens, some little disruptors figuring out some way of doing something different, which you'll either, acquire or copy or be disrupted by. Hopefully, you'll be leading that charge at the time. But yeah, it's over the next 10 years, there's a lot of changes that could happen, which we sometimes, as they say, hard to imagine. Now, from the future to the past, what's a little bit more about your own personal background in the world of tech, and even, what was the first computer that you remember using? What was your first exposure to technology?
Yeah, so I actually had a dad who was in the technology industry. So my father was in the very early days of IT. So worked in a really large transportation company, was actually a computer operator, then a programmer, and then went on to be a CIO actually towards the end of his career. So had a pretty diverse background, and so technology was more available. And actually my dad used to take me into his business sometimes on weekends, and I would actually see the data center back when data centers were massive mainframe computers. So first computer exposure I had was early in grade school. I had the opportunity to use an Apple IIc. And then
I
I
remember
think by the
those.
time I was maybe in junior high or high school, my dad got us basically an IBM PC, an IBM desktop for the home. So it started there, and then for me, when I got into the business world and I got into the technology industry, I was originally a finance person. And so I started way back at Sequent Computer Systems, and we were making these high-end, really fast distributed system servers in the late 90s and on into the early 2000s, got bought by IBM.
Hmm.
And then as years went on, my finance got more operational. I spent more time with the business, and then actually left finance along the journey at one of the companies and joined the sales organization. And so worked on and led a couple components that were in the sales organization in terms of sales operations, sales training. And then eventually went back to finance, did some more sales ops, became a CFO. And then and that was at Nintex. I joined as a CFO originally. Did that for about 4 years, and then I've been in the current role for about 3. So I've seen 7 different technology companies, everything from the early days, hardware, on through to several software companies, and it's been a great ride. I tell my kids all the time, my wife and I, that Dad was super blessed on the industry chosen. It's a dynamic industry, it's full of opportunity and tons of great people.
And you must have sort of thought every now and then, in your first or second or third job, if only you had the sort of technology that Nintex provided, what a difference it would have made to you at the time.
Absolutely. I mean, I look back at some of the terrible processes that existed at the companies that I worked in and with, the lack of visibility, not understanding what the processes were, even if they were manual. How do I know what I'm supposed to do, right? You're a new person, or you get a new role, or you move departments. And then I think about all of the processes that were manual, right? Signing physical pieces of paper, reviewing things in paper, or all the times you're in some emails trying to run a process or on a spreadsheet. And I think about what we now have and how different it makes, how much it eliminates work that is just non value added, and then how better the customer experience is. I think about some of the things we do for customers in terms of how we help customers with the contracting process and things like that. I mean, it's just a dramatically easier, quicker experience, and it gives you more time to do something else.
Yeah, the thing that Luddites got wrong was that technology doesn't, steal your job and enslave you to machines. It frees you up to do higher value things with your time. I mean, it's amazing the world worked at all in the 50s, 60s, and 10, 20 years ago with the technology we had. But that's all that we knew. It's like you said before with the kids. The kids of today have a phone in their pocket that is an up-to-date global encyclopedia of everything. If you told me as a kid that I could have a little thing in my pocket that could show me YouTube videos of anything I wanted to know, I mean, even though, I started using computers when I was 4.5 years old, I don't know necessarily if I believe you, but every kid takes it for granted and wouldn't have it any other way. And it's the same with businesses and business processes. You can never imagine going back to the way it was. And you're right at the forefront of all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I don't want to go back to the way it was when I first started. This is much, much better. And even this pandemic period has been a great proof point, right? At Nintex, I think it was second week of March or third week of March in 2020. We had to go fully. The fact that today we have 800 team members and very few people actually go to a physical office, and yet we're continuing to grow. We're continuing to help our customers succeed. We're continuing to help our partners expand their business, and we're doing it all remote. And we basically did that overnight.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
It is, and I mean, it's been remarked upon by many people how much the whole digital landscape has been massively accelerated by the new realities of COVID. I mean, I think we're going to get to the future that you envision for 2030 a lot sooner because of what happened last year. Otherwise, if 2020 didn't happen, you'd be in your office and I'd be in mine, and we'd still be in that pre-COVID world, which is, we're not in Kansas anymore, as they say.
That's the truth.
So, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever received in life to help you get where you are today?
Yeah, so I think I was reflecting back on that concept, and I get asked that every once in a while, and I was thinking about that, and I think the one that comes to mind is I had a very early mentor and boss early in my career, and he was really simple, but basically the gist of what he told me was, deliver on your commitments, and be great to work with. And that if you would deliver on your commitments and you'd be great to work with, then you'd have a whole lot of opportunity come in your life. And so that's what I've carried through. And in fact, we have 3 core tenets at Nintex. Number 1 is deliver on our commitments. 2 is don't wait. This is all about going fast. And then number 3 is operate with respect and consideration. And so that's exactly what we try to do here. Deliver on our commitments, move with a high sense of urgency, and treat people well. I think if you do those things, then you tend to have a lot of opportunity in life.
Well, it sounds like very good advice to me. So my final question to you is, what is your final message to iTWire viewers and readers, and to your current and future customers and partners?
Well, I'd say first off, now it's never been a better time in the world to go after these processes. I think the ability to understand your processes, to reimagine what's possible, and then to employ automation technology, really transform them and materially improve the operations of your business. Never been a better time to do that. I think at Nintex, we don't do not the right choice for every situation, but I will tell you that we can help you with a lot of your challenges and really materially push your business forward. I think it's important that you work with companies that you can trust, that have people you're going to want to spend time with. And I know that we're a provider who really values our customers and partners, values our team, and we'd love to help as many organizations as possible on their journeys. And we're a company you can trust, and you look for continued innovation.
Well, Eric Johnson, CEO of Nintex, thank you very much for your time, and I hope we can speak again in the future.
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.